Welcome, Danielle. Thanks for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I'm just going to give our audience a little bit of an introduction, and then we can get straight into it. So, as I said, we're welcoming sporters and learning from sporters from around the globe. And today we have the pleasure of talking to you, greeting us from Canada. You are, let me get that straight. There's a whole bunch of accomplishments. You're a Canadian curler and with an amazing track record. So you won the Ontario Junior Curling Championships, and then you progressed to be winning the Canadian Mixed Curling Championships and the World Mixed Championships. So that seems like quite a progression here. And you also have your experience store up in the SPRTER app, and you are one of our early adopters. You've been with us for quite a while, and so I'm super excited to be talking to you all things curling, your career, and what is it that motivates you. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. That was quite the introduction. Thank you.
Let me start out with asking you, really looking at taking it a step back, as in young Danielle, how did you get started with curling?
My parents, they're both curlers, brought me to the rink at a young age. I threw my first rocks at 7, and I guess just loved it from there. And I'm a naturally competitive person. So once I got the opportunity to start competing around 12, like seriously competing around 12 or 13, just got the taste for it and went from there, really.
And how did what was that moment where you realized, I was like, I'm actually better than most of the others in here. So when did you make that, hey, I can really make a career out of this?
Well, I still don't know if I've ever, but I guess, I don't know. I just feel like in this sport, in curling, you're always learning. So I feel like it's something that you're constantly striving towards. I don't know if there was an exact moment when it clicked. I think as I was progressing and more opportunities have been happening in the sport of curling. So it's been recognized as a sport at the university and college level, nationally by Curling Canada. So that was a huge step. And so that provides, I was in the very first sanctioned event for the national championship. So that provided a lot of great experience for me. And since then, like, that was one of the moments where I knew I could keep going. I guess I would say that when we won back-to-back national championships and went on to play at the World Universiade, those are some of the moments where I was like, hey, I have a chance. So I would say that, and it's so neat seeing all the things that are coming into the sport and for the future generations too. Just so many great opportunities.
That I mean, I can see that. Obviously, winning back to back is like, not only yet we won it, but hey, actually we confirmed that. So I can absolutely see that as a pivotal moment. And you've been talking about these moments and the support and how the sport has been growing. Can you talk us a little bit through that from your perspective?
Sure. So there's, I guess, they're continually making more opportunities for younger curlers and people to get into curling, period, because a lot of people around my age or older have a very similar story to what I told you off the top with, like, your parents curled and that's how you got into curling. But now there are more programs in schools for elementary, high school, at the university and college level too. So it's getting kids into it earlier. So now you're starting to see kids say, hey, I got into curling because I tried it at school more often. And then more national championships. So there's an under 18 championship now in addition to an under 21, and so many more coming up, like the Youth Olympic Games too, is a huge one, and curling's part of that.
And what do you see? I mean, obviously right now the Olympics are happening. Canada is doing pretty well. Obviously, it's a summer sport. Curling is a winter sport. Do you see any of those effects from a summer? Like, even though, hey, the Olympics are on, what is going on with the curling community? Are people talking about it more? Is it more prevalent? How's that particular around the Winter Olympics time? How's that for the curling community and for you yourself and the sport and the promotion of it?
It's huge. Having the Olympics being put on the world really gets people seeing a sport and seeing it on TV too. They're like, hey, this is neat. I've never seen this. I've never tried this. Hey, I want to try it. So there's always a big influx of people wanting to try curling right after the Olympics. And so that's a huge thing. I've done some teaching down in the States too, and especially there, it's so huge because they really haven't been exposed to it. Talk about a lot of Canadians know what curling is at level. I would say that like as a generalization, but in the States it's definitely much different. So it's neat being able to see the effect of the Olympics because it really makes a huge difference for our sport.
Okay, and I've seen that there are some like different nations are pushing into the sport, and as a Canadian, I'm sure the Canadians I would assume it's similar as with hockey, as in hey, we own this. So how do you feel when you see different nations pushing into the sport and growing their curling community abroad, where you're like, oh, I didn't even know they had a curling team there, and now that is growing.
It's fantastic to see. It really needs that in order to build the sport, keep it an Olympic sport too. But I will say the competition is getting so tough. Other nations have been pouring money into it. So the expectation of a lot of Canadian curling fans is that curlers are always going to bring home the gold medal for Canada, and that's not the case anymore. And not to by any means to discredit any of the work done by any of our Olympians who brought home gold before, because that was hard work. But I don't think you'd have much argument by anybody saying that's harder now for all the development that's been done all over the world.
I can absolutely see that. I mean, the level of competition increasing, and for a sport where you're like, oh, we owned it. Wait a second. Well, why are other nations now suddenly competing?
Yeah, exactly. And fans just don't understand that quite yet. They don't understand what's happening. And also you see Canadian coaches going off and coaching in other countries and developing them, and people don't understand why that's happening either. But in general, it's a good thing for the sport. It's one of the best things for the sport in the global community is that the men's curling team from the US winning gold. That was one of the best things to happen, because it really started putting curling on the map even more so for the Americans, and that's a huge population. So it's that was really big.
I can absolutely see that. Now, as someone who's curled mixed, what's the situation for women to get involved with curling? Obviously, you are a female athlete, and we see a lot of the recent push for more equality, which is absolutely needed. So how do you see equality playing out in the sport of curling? What do you see the opportunities for young girls to get involved as opposed to what boys have been getting?
Honestly, that's one of the most amazing things about curling, is that it is very equal in terms of what we've been playing. Both have national championships for men and women at the Olympics as well. There's also there's mixed curling that I done with the 4 players. That's not an Olympic sport, but mixed doubles is, which is 1 man, 1 woman. And so it's a great sport for equality. And there are differences between the men's and the women's game for sure. But I would say it's one that's more on equal par than perhaps some other sports, which is really neat. And you often see at the recreational level, you have men and women playing against each other. So that's something that you see quite often. So really it is a great sport for young women to join in. Okay,
so that's your elevator pitch right there. I mean, that's awesome. We do have a segment that we call Poll Booth, where we ask you questions and we look in for short, to the point answers, just to get to know you a little bit better and ask some things that generally don't happen. So looking for you to settle a few hot debates here. Tailgating versus going to the bar and watch the game.
Ooh, going to the bar and watch the game.
Okay. I guess it's cold in Canada, so tailgating.
Thank you.
Protein shake or smoothie?
Which? Say that again?
A protein shake or smoothie?
Oh, protein shake.
Okay. Poutine or regular fries?
Poutine all day.
Okay. I kind of expected that.
Would I be Canadian if I said fries?
Yeah, no. I don't think so. Hot dog versus cheesesteak?
Oh, I don't even know if I've had cheesesteak, so hot dog.
Okay. Lake or ocean?
Lake. There's tons of lakes around where I live. They're beautiful.
Nice. Beach or mountains?
Ooh, beach.
British Columbia or Ontario?
Well, I live in Ontario, but BC is absolutely gorgeous. Every time I visited it, just unreal. I love Ontario. I live here, so I'll say Ontario.
Okay. Sing or dance?
Dance. Can't sing to sing.
Okay, cool. That's just a quick fire round just to get a different side from you as well. As for the cheesesteak, we are based in Philadelphia with the SPRTER app. I think I personally am vegetarian, but there are some vegetarian cheesesteaks as well. And I've been told that there are amazing cheesesteaks that we have in Philly. So I think that's something to put on your list.
All right, it's on there now.
All right, let's transition back into the sport. Looking for role models, as in people we grow up, we admire people that have awesome abilities, and particularly within the sports world. Who did you admire, and what role models inspired you?
So a whole curling team inspired me. Sandra Schmirler's team. They won, I believe it was 3 national titles as well as the Olympic gold. And unfortunately we lost Sandra in 2000 to cancer, but her and her whole team were such an inspiration to me. And what I loved about their team and still continue to admire is that they curled at the top level of the sport, but they never forgot to have fun. Mm-hmm. And that I think that's so important to do, and that's what I practice in my own life.
Okay, that's really good. I think that what we see when people really pushing to the top, and oftentimes that can lead to, right now the discussion around mental health of athletes and what we see with the Olympics, and I can see that once you start losing that having that fun and doing it, that is something that not only has an impact on performance, but has some real health issues as well. So that's a really good justification and a really good role model to have and live by. That's Absolutely. Awesome.
And it's huge. I also for my day job, the stuff that pays the bills, I work for curling, the National Sporting Organization in Canada, in the social media communications capacity. And we recently, back in February, March, April, and May, were hosting a bunch of events back to back, national and international events in one hub city in Calgary. And it was a grind being there the whole time for everyone involved, athletes and whatnot. So what people don't see behind the scenes when you talk about athlete mental health, people generally, especially if you're not an athlete, you don't have an idea about what's actually going to prepare for performance and then actually perform when you have to. But there's an added level of stress, like even at these Olympics here, people don't understand. So you take something like what Simone Biles and her whole situation, there's so many other layers that people just couldn't possibly understand, and no one would unless you're in her position. There are some people who are more uniquely suited to understanding, but in my mind, fans just need to give a little bit more grace and understanding.
Well, I totally agree. And that's one thing that every person in the nation has an opinion on an athlete, whereas very few people have the justification or the right to have an opinion. So I totally agree in terms of mental health and pushing for that. That fun and making sure that the athlete that you're having fun. Because I mean, as regular people are like, well, I don't like my job anymore. It's like, okay, well then I'm changing jobs, I'm changing career. But as an athlete, we're like, well, there's only one Olympics to compete in. That's about it. So
So,
I can understand that. Now, as a curling is more or less an individualized sport, but you also work in teams. You're working with Team Canada, and what's the importance of the team captain? Someone to particular for younger athletes.
yeah. So I guess there's leaders on the team. It's starting, the dynamic always changes depending on what kind of team you have, but having a strong leader on the team is important to drive you forward, to inspire you, to keep you motivated. But the unique thing about curling too is that you really need, because it's such a small team, you really need everyone on board on the same page for what your goals are, your motivation, and all that, and to be able to pull each other up. But leadership is huge to be able to really drive performance.
And is there support in terms of tactics? I mean, like from the team captain, from the leadership perspective, or is it nope? Let me do my thing. I know what I'm doing.
So in curling, there's the skip, and they're the one at the end, other end of the ice. I guess I describe it to non-curlers as like the one holding the broom, yelling things. So they are kind of the de facto leader on the team, but there are other people on the team. So they may not be the biggest leader, but they definitely are on the ice when you just by their position, and that really sets the tone of the team.
Okay, so big importance. I hear from the team and the leadership perspective. We have a segment that we call Pro Advice. So we asked some of our followers what questions they would have for you, for our professionals. So in the Pro Advice segment, we had 2 submissions. One is asking, I'm having trouble getting mentally prepared for the game. It's affecting my performance. You got any advice of getting me ready mentally?
It would be a couple things. One, you've got to recognize what's blocking you mentally, and then remove those distractions. Those, and using, and not always taking it upon yourself to feel the pressure, like I have to do it, but also relying on the resources you have around you, whether it's your teammate, your coach, a sports psychologist, your family, your friends, whatever you need to have. But to solve a problem, you first have to understand that there is a problem and what that is, and really be open and honest with yourself.
And as you just mentioned, I think there are a lot of resources that a lot of athletes have to tap into, and given that competition and that competitive mindset, what we athletes always oftentimes have is like, oh no, I can deal with that myself, no worries, no big deal. So I think that's a really good reminder as in, hey, you can tap into resources, you can tap into support, and you don't need to do it all yourself. So that's awesome. The second submission reads, I feel that I'm the best player on the team on my position, but I'm still a bench player. You got any advice on that?
Well, I guess I would speak to curling, I guess, a bunch, because what's unique about curling as opposed to other sports is that you're self-selecting a team for the most part, especially in Canada. There are very few instances where a team is chosen for you. So if you're in curling and you're being sat on the bench or whatnot, find a new team. find some players who are willing to do that. But in either case, I think you kind of have to go back to, okay, why am I here, and what could I do differently, and whether that's something that you improve within yourself or something you're talking to a coach about that, looking for that feedback, and goes back to understanding the situation. But for curling specifically, definitely you got to find people who are on the same page with you. And if you don't want to be sitting on the bench, well, then you might have to change something out, because if you're on the bench for the most part, you probably agreed to it in the first place. And if you didn't have those expectations set out at the beginning, then that's on you. So you've got to make sure you set those expectations before you join a team and really know what you're getting into. So ask all the questions before.
Okay, fair enough. That's a good advice as well. I'm not just blindly joining up and being like, oh, I should be playing. I think that's also something that sometimes coaches have a reason for benching someone, and sometimes there's, as you said, join a different team. That's you need to seek the change as well. We do have another segment that's called Break the Rules. And that's honestly my favorite segment.
Yeah.
Because with breaking the rules, I'm asking you to change one rule that would make curling more exciting, or the sport better in general.
Oh man. I'd say something would be neat to see would be able to rethrow one shot out of a whole game, and that you could pick that one shot to rethrow. I think that would be something that would be neat to see. I don't know if I'd throw that right into the top competition, but it would be a neat thing to kind of see, I think, for the fans too, because it would add just an extra layer of like, are they going to use it right now? Are they going to make the shot a second time? So I think that could be a neat one.
That's a good one. I actually have one, and I'm so excited to be bringing this up. I think it should lead to complete change in curling. I'm proposing 3 obstacles throughout the whole game that each team has that they can throw in for the opposing team. Whenever, like a Mario Kart kind of situation where you're just like, well, you now have to curl around the mushroom. So
you know what? I've actually played in a fun tournament with something like that, where they had different things. It was a fun one in the summer, but they had different obstacles on the ice that you had to curl around.
So it's like a mini golf curling type of thing as well.
Yes, it was. It was a lot of fun.
I think we're onto something here.
Absolutely.
Now that links us basically straight into your job at Curling Canada. I mean, I think other than implementing this new rule change, what are you doing with Team Canada? Is it Team Canada? Curling Canada.
Yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what's your average day there, and what do you do there? How do you support the curlers, and how does it work for yourself?
So I work in social media and communications, so managing all the social media and the website content across all 20 plus of our websites. Okay. So it keeps quite busy. I get the question, oh, do you have a break in the summer? Or do you work in the summer? Yes, absolutely. Do all the things that we didn't get a chance to. So there's a lot of that. So it's promoting curling and getting people excited about curling, sharing what's going on at events. And that's so huge, because an arena only holds so many people, and there are many more people watching from back at home. And so giving a little bit more insight. It's also to promote the sport and the athletes as well. So telling their stories. So what is it about them that is fascinating? Curling has so many stories and so many incredible people that I really enjoy sharing that. And you talk about athletes and people judging them and fans judging. Well, this gives an opportunity when you actually know the people. You're more likely to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So my job is all about keeping the positivity flowing.
That's awesome. Now, given we have an expert here with you in terms of how should young, upcoming, or established curlers, what's some of the tips and tricks that they can do in order to position their personal brand, in order to grow their personal brand, the following, and the sport itself? What are some of the tips and tricks that they can follow in order to succeed and off the field?
Getting out there and putting yourself out there, and that can be super scary. And I know I've even had those moments of going like, do I want to share that? So I guess being open and vulnerable. Some of the people that are the most well-known or recognizable in the sport, there's always something different about them. So just finding out what it is about you. So I guess looking at yourself and saying, hey, what do I want to share with people? What do I want to share in the world? What's something unique about me? And putting it out there. And I guess I keep using the words putting it out there, but you do have to spend time putting yourself out there into the world. Use social media is super fun. It does take some work though. So it's preparing to do that work.
Okay, and I totally agree in terms of making sure your voice is heard and getting the word out there, and as you say, putting yourself out there as in different outlets, different platforms. I think making sure that you position your brand in a way that you wanna be perceived as. And you mentioned earlier, as in it's all about the positivity flowing. What's some advice that you have in regards to, hey, how do I deal with some negative comments or any of those aspects versus how do I deal with positive comments and praise?
For sure. Well, a part of it is when you're in competition, the suggestion is, depending, you've got to know yourself first, and maybe you just have to put the social media away, or you just post, or you have someone else posting for you and you're not looking until after the competition. But in general, dealing with positivity or negativity is understanding where it's coming from. And who is this person? Why are they doing it? Because quite often it comes from a place of insecurity and ignorance. And so it's helping. I know in my job, that's huge, because we, despite all the positive things I just talked about, and the neat curlers and the players and how exciting the sport is, there is a lot of negativity that comes our way. And I admit it took a while for me to not, to be able to deal with it effectively and to not let it affect me personally, especially when they're talking about sport I'm so passionate about, and in some case my friends, who I'm trying to promote to the world. And so it's taking everything with a grain of salt and just letting it roll off your back, which is way easier said than done. But it's understanding where it comes from. I just watched a really interesting TikTok today about a man who was running on a treadmill. It was showing I think it was the 1,200 meter race. It was showing a man running on the treadmill at the same pace that those athletes were basically going. And this guy looks like he's full out sprinting on the treadmill, but on the TV, it looks like they're just kind of casually jogging. But it's like, that's one of those moments where it's like, wow, you really don't understand what's going on out there. So it's finding ways to show what is going on. And I know everybody has a line of what you tell versus what you don't, but helping to educate people and telling them is huge. And that will help combat any of those negative comments that come in.
That's a really good advice. I appreciate it. And I think our listeners are going to really get some benefit out of that and try and look into apply that knowledge. It is getting dark here. I'm currently based in Europe, so I apologize for the poor lighting. Didn't think the sun would set that quickly. But we are also hitting our 30-minute mark, and I want to be cognizant of your time. So really appreciate your insights. I do know that you will have, unfortunately can't share it now, but you will have a big announcement coming up soon. So we want to trigger that as well to the audience. And we're excited to learn about it and then also share it. And I also want to just mention your setup with your experience store on the SPRTER app, where followers can really engage with you on a totally different level, whether it's personalized Zoom calls, pro advice, any of those aspects. So check out Danielle's experience store on the SPRTER app. Also, we will have an update coming with the SPRTER app soon, which is really focused on helping athletes to highlight their careers, their achievements, and some of the aspects that we talked about right now in terms of, well, how do I promote myself? We have some pretty exciting updates on the profile there as well. So in the meantime, give Danielle a follow on all of the other socials as well, at Inglis Danielle. And what have I forgotten? What do you want to share?
Oh my gosh. Well, I just appreciate all the work that you guys do in helping promote athletes, especially athletes from amateur sports that don't always get the opportunity to be on a bigger stage and that. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Awesome. We love to do that because those are the stories that other people don't really tell. So we love to tell those. And I really appreciate you being with the SPRTER fam for such a long time, and yeah, we're excited about all of the updates coming from you soon.
Great. I'm looking forward to be able to post more because I'll actually be curling.
Yes, awesome.
Pandemic put a little bit of a twist on that.
Only a little bit.
A little bit.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to those updates soon.
Thank you so much. Take
All right,
care.
thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.